In 1954, a Supreme Court ruling declared segregation in education as unconstitutional. Rosenwald schools became obsolete. At one time, the pride of their communities, many were abandoned or demolished. In 2002, the National Trust joined forces with the grassroots activists, local officials, and preservationists to help raise awareness of this important but little-known segment of our nation's history, placing Rosenwald schools on its 11 most endangered historic places list. Of the over 5,000 schools, shops, and teacher homes constructed between 1917 and 1932, only 10 to 12% are estimated to survive today. The National Trust is providing technical assistance, grants, workshops, and other conferences to help save these icons of progressive architecture for community use. The Central Colored Elementary School in Central South Carolina is one of these facilities.
This building was built between 1910 and 1924. It was the responsibility of Booker T. Washington, leader of Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and Julias Rosenwald. He was the leader of C.S. Roebuck and Company, and he was a philanthropist. Booker T. Washington had a need for education of the black children back then because there was no schooling for black children. And he contacted Julias Rosenwald to see if he could help. Initially, he sponsored about 6 or 7 schools in Alabama, but the people got the message out throughout the South, and they wanted him to see if they could help them build a school, because the white population was the only one that was going to school, and our children had never been educated. So eventually it went from 6 or 7 and then 8 or 9, and then it eventually got up to 5,000, over 5,000 schools in the South. And they were called Rosenwald schools. Booker T. Washington died in 1915, and Julius Rosenwald, he took over, he got into the organization of the Rosenwald schools around 1925 until his death.
During the time that this building was created, the problem with schools was linked to economic and racial. Mm-hmm. Was there ever a moment when you thought that the way the community was during that time would ever affect the opportunities that you would have in life?
Yes. No schooling, no equal opportunity, no type of opportunity for the black children at that time. And so after, during slavery, the slaves weren't, they weren't allowed to read or write. And so it was just as if, they had never been taught. And if you was caught during that time learning to read, you could have been killed or lynched. So the opportunity wasn't there. Mostly after the Civil War and after Emancipation Proclamation, it was still slavery in some places. And the same thing that went on during slavery was the same thing that was done after slavery for us, education. And so there was no need, there was no opportunity to get any type of education. So they were just like it was before the Civil War.
this was once a segregated school because it was created before with the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Which was 64, correct?
Yeah, that was the Brown versus Board of Education.
Right. Okay. So could you tell me what life was like during the time that this school and community center was at its prime? So this would be like...
This was our lifeline. This was everything here in Central centered around this school. Well, it was reading, writing, arithmetic. But after hours, when we had a play, then the whole community would turn out, and it would be full. It would be so crowded. Sometimes they had to build scaffolds to open up the windows so people could see what was going on. It was everything to the community. We was proud of it. They were proud of it. Whole Central was aware of it, even the white population, because sometimes they would come and join our plays and stuff. On up to 1957, everything changed. They closed this school and sent us to different locations. I was sent to Calhoun Elementary School in Clemson, and my wife was also. And then after, it was from the 5th to the 7th grade then. After graduate from Calhoun Elementary, we had to go to Clearview High School in Easley, South Carolina. We were bused up there. This left a hole in our community, a hole in our, spirit, because it seemed like it fractured the whole community. There was a lot going on after school. Our teachers was tremendous. They would get different plays together, and sometimes we would have programs here, like I was telling you, Sister Rosetta Thought and Sister Marie Knight. They passed through here, so they gave a concert, and the place would be packed. And also a singer named Sister Edna Galvin Cook, who was the cousin of Sam Cooke, and I'm not sure you've heard of him. He gave a concert here. We also had a special program that was two ladies that was conjoined twins, and nobody ever had seen them around here before. And so they came, and they, and everybody was wanting to see them, so there was a big crowd here too. Also, we had a play here one time, and I can't remember the name, but it was all male. It was a womanless wedding, that's what it was. And we always had crowds, and we always had opening the windows for people. And my dad, he was the husband, and I was the ring bearer. I had a little dress on. It took a long time for me to live that down, but I was no more than 8 or 9 years old. During the fourth Sunday, every fourth Sunday in October, there was what you call a camp meeting. It was a meeting of kind of like a homecoming of the Methodist churches. It was a big gathering, and people would come from all over the United States, and you couldn't hardly drive through here. We just walk all day. There was booths set up, and we would buy stuff and take pictures, and the boys would dress up for the girls, and the girls would dress up for the boys, and parking was limited here, and they would park all out everywhere they could find, and the whole town was crowded.
Wow.
And it kind of, after the closing of the school, and it kind of waned off until maybe the middle 70s or something, but wasn't as large as it was back then. During school time, May the 1st, we would have wrapping the maypole. And we would have it out there in the front. And the boys were dressed in black and white, and the girls, I imagine, because I had to ask my wife this, but they were dressed mostly in white dresses. And we would wrap the maypole, going around and wrapping the maypole. And people would stop on the road, and that was a big time. Coming to school, you'd have to have somebody to build a fire because we had no janitors. And so our teachers would pay somebody to come and start the fires every morning. And I think they would get 75 cents a week to start the fires. We'd be having class, and it would be cold because there was no insulation in here. And so our teachers would give permission for us to go and stand at the stove maybe a few minutes. Then when you get up, somebody else goes in that way. And by the time they got through the whole classes, then you had to go again because it would be so cold. And in the summertime, they would lift the windows. And because of the high ceilings, they would keep it kind of cool. And we didn't go all summer, so it lasted on up to the last of May, early June. What saved men and women back there was not the restroom at that time. We had a supply room where they had foodstuffs and stuff like that in, and also books. But in that last room there, they would have a coat. You hang your coat. At my time, you hang coats in there. All these stoves were pot-belly stoves. Nobody uses them no more. You can still see the chimneys up in the ceiling there where the pipes went up. The cook wasn't cooks. She would fix lunch for maybe sometime 60 or 70 children. It was a wooden stove. And somebody had to make the fire there too. So whoever made the fire, these stoves had to make the fire in there. The lunch when I started was 5 cents. And you sit there and you ain't got 5 cents in that. There was no, it was a barrier, the walls and everything, but there wasn't no insulation in them. And so the smell, if you ain't got no money to eat lunch, the smell,
make you hungry.
Yeah, and a lot of us, our stomachs were growling there. Me and my brother, we lived pretty well the closest. We lived down the street. And so my mother, what she had left us, we had to eat that. Sometimes it wouldn't be nothing but cold pinto beans and fatback and whole cake bread. But that stopped our stomach from growling. We never had any restrooms. We had what they call toilets. And the girls' toilet was on the back side of the school here, and the boys' side was on this side of the school. And you go out there in the wintertime, it's cold, but you had to go. And when it get hot, you didn't want to go in there because of
the smell.
Yeah, the smell. Oh my goodness. For about 3 or 4 years there, they built restrooms on the outside with running, and we had running water. One of the mayors here ran a water line here, so we could have water cooking and stuff like that. But that's the only time we had water. I thought that those restrooms that they built around about 1953, I thought that was the best thing since sliced bread.
What was your absolute favorite memory about coming here?
I love the teachers. The teacher that was here, it was in this room, it was the 1st through the 3rd grade. In the other room, it was the 4th through the 7th grade. And those were absolute great teachers. In this room was Miss Sylvine Sizemore from Seneca. And from the 4th through the 7th grade, it was Miss Conyers Thompson from Seneca. They were well educated.
The Central Community Center has been preserved for many years since the school shut down. The individuals who have charged themselves with the upkeep of the property have continued to fight to keep the building up and functional. Now, their fight to keep it open and standing has finally paid off. Effective as of February of 2023, this location will be honored as a historical landmark in Central South Carolina in honor of Black History Month.